Hi everyone, Ted Wyman here with another edition of Jet Setting. I guess it's our Christmas edition. I am joined today by Scott Billeck to talk about everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets. And Scott, if you're going to talk about the Winnipeg Jets right now, you have to talk about a player who wears number 44 for them. Defenseman Josh Morrissey having just an unbelievable season. He set a new career high for points with 38. In his 32nd game of the year, he's on pace for mid-90s for the year. It's kind of unheard of for a guy who just hasn't shown that kind of all-around game,
Yeah,
offensive, defensive, in pro hockey before, but he is just having a great year. Scott, what is your take on what you've seen from Josh Morrissey so far?
pure confidence, and a perfect marriage in the system with Rick Bowness. I mean, Josh Morrissey is playing with all. I mean, you watch that Ottawa game and the goal that he scores. I mean, he just dances the blue line around Drake Batherson and just rips a wrist shot through traffic. I mean, he said after the game, I saw a hole and I went for it. And I like it's just automatic for him right now. It's the slap pass 2 games in a row now. One to Shifley, one last night to Kyle Connor. I mean, that's it. And we've seen that before, but I mean, now we're seeing it. Like the hockey IQ is off the charts. So Rick Bowness talked about this after the game. Um, Called him an elite player. Well, yeah. I mean, here's a guy who's on pace for 95 points right now. Like those are Roman Yossi numbers from last season, and certainly Norris Trophy winning numbers. Like that's what he. I mean, it's insane to think how big of a change this has been for Josh Morrissey, between Paul Maurice and then going to Rick Bowness. I mean, Josh Morrissey's on a career high 10 game point streak right now. He hasn't gone more than a game without a point this season. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's fun to watch because he's so good at what he's doing right now, and he's not really sacrificing much defensively either. And I think that might be the biggest thing for the Jets is that they're getting the complete package right now from Josh Morrissey. And I mean, the record speaks for themselves. They're 21-10 and 10-1 through 32 games, and atop the Western Conference on points percentage right now. So what else can you say about Josh that we haven't already said? I mean, he's one of the best defensemen in the league this season, if not the best defenseman this season.
Yeah, well, that's pretty lofty praise, isn't it? But
Yeah,
I think what I would say about him is that coming into the season, I would say the Jets' best players are Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc
yeah,
Dubois, Kyle Connor, and then there's this group of defensemen. They don't really have a true number one. And then
yeah,
now, 32 games later, you're saying, boy, do they ever have a true number one? And this argument about who the Jets' best player is, well, that has to include Josh Morrissey at the moment. And that's saying a lot because Connor Hellebuck's having a great season. But you look at that Ottawa game, Connor Hellebuck's not even able to play because of illness. And, David Riddick's in there and he has a fine game. In fact, he held them in pretty well when they were getting outshot early on.
yeah,
But Josh Morrissey dominated that hockey game. I mean, there's no other way of looking at it. He was making those beautiful spin moves, the little dipsy doodle at the line that led to the goal. I mean, you could hear audible gasps in the crowd, every time he
yeah.
did something special with the puck. And it's just, I'm sorry, I just didn't necessarily expect that from him. I do know that he was an extremely good player in junior. And I think he put up big numbers there. He was played really well at both ends of the ice. He was good with Team Canada as a young guy, but as a pro, this has not been something that has been embraced for him by a coaching staff before. And clearly, what Rick Bowness has done in instilling so much confidence in him, in basically telling him that the other teams, when Rick Bowness was coaching other teams, they were coaching against Josh Morrissey because he was one of if not the most important players on that team. And I think that all has just resonated so well with Morrissey. And the result is, a true place in the conversation for the Norris Trophy, and
Yeah.
that's something pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it's extremely impressive. It harkens back to the days of his junior career. You mentioned it. I mean, I remember watching him here in Brandon, well, not over in Brandon during the playoffs one year, and he was unbelievably good at doing what he's good at now. I think when he came into the NHL, No, he had to learn how to play, better defense, obviously, and he really took to that, playing with, Jacob Trouba, especially during that Western Conference final run where, they were one of the best shutdown pairs in the NHL that season. Um, but I always felt, and I think a lot of people felt that Josh was being held back offensively. I think the last 3 years too, at least the last two before last year, where it was almost like they had Josh hitched to Tucker Poolman or one of these guys they picked up on waivers to kind of deal with the mass exodus they had on the right side of defense. And so Josh had to play defense. And I always, it almost feels like, I mean, if Josh was probably honest about this a bit, I think he would say that he was, I don't know, held back is the right term, but he just felt like it was too risky to try and do what he's doing now on offense at times because he just didn't have the system that was covering for him. The forwards weren't getting back and covering for him, moving up from the point or leading a rush or anything like that. So I think that's, it's a mindset now where I think he feels comfortable in it. I think all these defensemen have had a bit of hesitancy to start the year because they're like, oh, well, is somebody going to cover for me? Or is this just going to lead to an odd man rush the other way? I don't think that's the case anymore. I think all these guys have confidence that everybody on the ice is going to do the right thing if a defenseman decides to lead the rush or move in from the blue line or whatever it might be. And so I think Josh Morrissey is playing a bit of a carefree game right now offensively where, and I don't mean that in a way where he doesn't care or anything like that, but it's just like it's so fluid now for him. He feels confidence in doing what he's doing. And again, the numbers speak for themselves. The Norris Trophy talk is very legitimate right now. And I think people are starting to finally see this around the NHL, right? After last night, the NHL had their banner on their Twitter account with Josh Morrissey's photo on it, and so like I think other people outside of Winnipeg, maybe outside of the Canadian markets, are starting to see that hey, Josh Morrissey is having a good year, and they're all starting to take notice.
Well, and it's been a big part of why the Winnipeg Jets are a very good team this year. It's not something we necessarily even expected for them, but they have played a very good hockey. As you said, they lead the Western Conference on points percentage. They've they've come back strong in situations like this. The way they played against Vancouver, the way they played against Ottawa, they had a real battle to try to get a point out of Seattle. They weren't able to do it. They just didn't seem to have the legs for it because they played so many games. But then they come back, they get 1 day's rest, and then they're pretty dominant against Ottawa. So I mean, it's certainly a lot of good signs as they head into a Christmas break with games in Boston and Washington before Christmas. Those are going to be really tough games. Those are two really good teams and teams that I don't think Boston's lost at home yet this year. So this is a real challenge for the Winnipeg Jets. But even putting those results aside, I think a lot of fans in Winnipeg would probably be feeling like they got an early Christmas present from the Jets just because of how well they've played to this point, and even done so through injuries. Nikolai Ehlers has been out for so long. Blake Wheeler's now out a month. Nate Schmidt's out at least a month. Mason Appleton's out. These are important regular players, and the one nice thing, and that you can't help but think about, is this team's played so well, and in the new year they're going to start getting these guys back. It's like if you were trying to make a move at the trade deadline, could you even get better guys than that? And so there's some real hope of really strong additions down the road as well, isn't there, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, just to back up a little bit there, I think one of the things that has been a bit of a hallmark why this team has been successful this year is as good as that 5-1 win looked last night for the Jets. Rick Bowness came in the first two answers that he gave. He basically ripped his team for not winning the right way. I find that it's just such a change around here, right?
Yeah, true.
I mean, 5-1 wins done in a let's say a lackadaisical manner or whatever from years past would have been celebrated, lauded, that sort of thing. This year, it's different, right? Because you see the 5-1 win in Vancouver, and Rick Bowness was very happy with that game. And then you see the 5-1 win 2 nights or 3 nights later, 4 nights later, You see a 5-1 win, and Rick Bowness is not happy and wants his team to, to improve in different areas and tighten up. I think that's such an important change for this team this year that, hey, a 5-1 win is great. It's good to get the 2 points in the bag and in the bank and in the standings and all that. But it needs to be done the right way because, you're going to lose games down the road. Let's talk about Boston. Maybe, a team as good as Boston, they've only lost four games this year. They haven't lost in regulation at home all season. The Jets are going to walk into TD Garden there facing a team that just doesn't really lose right now. And so, if you're going to beat them, you can't have the start that you did against the Senators where you're down 15-5 on the shots. Because Boston's going to make you pay a lot more than excuse me, than say Ottawa will, right? So I think that's where this is. And yes, I think the best thing that happened to the Jets this week was getting these 2 points against Ottawa because it takes some of the pressure off. You lose in Seattle. If you would have lost against Ottawa, then you're staring down, losing your first 3-game losing streak of the season, and you got to beat Boston to kind of end that. The Jets are capable of beating Boston. They've beaten good teams this year. They've beaten good teams handily this year. But again, that 5-1 win, they want the 5-1 performance out of Vancouver on this road trip coming up more than they want the 5-1 win against Ottawa. And I think that's, something that's kept this team so level headed this season is that Rick Bowness isn't afraid to tell the team what they've done wrong in such a lopsided victory.
Well, Connor Hellebuyck is expected back. Kyle Connor's having a fine season. Certainly doesn't mind it when Josh Morrissey is feeding him slap passes for wide open nets. And, Mark Scheifele continues to put pucks in the net. And there's been a lot of positives. Also, Kevin Stenlund scoring from the fourth line. You've had goals from Axel Janssen-Fjällby. You've got Sam Gagner putting the puck in the net. A lot of support work going on with this team as well. So, Scott, anyways, I want to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas, and to all of our viewers out here on Jet Setting, Merry Christmas to you as well. And we will be talking to you after the holiday when we come back with more Jet Setting. For Scott Billeck, I'm Ted Wyman. You've been watching Jet Setting on winnipegsun.com.